Islam Nunaji Friday class. We back at it one more time. So, a lot of stuff. As you guys know, been going on in the background.
Confusion continues to confuse, no remembrance of Maghrib al-Aqsa. My word is the sound.
You know, we got a lot of work to do.
Battling my arch nemesis, misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces.
So y'all just get ready, get prepared, you know, if you haven't already been doing so. Because we're going to, you know, a new level next year, as far as like how the movement is actually moving right now. It's picking up its pace. So hopefully you guys have been paying attention and are along for the ride, so to speak, or, you know, in the driver's seat rather. And the reason why I want to put emphasis on being in the driver's seat is because you really are in control of this Moorish movement. You, the individual, whoever's sitting at home or on the phone, you know, looking at this later on YouTube or what have you, you're the one who actually, you know, has the power to make something happen. But what you don't realize most of the time is that fact. And that based on that fact, that it's incumbent upon you to then be proactive with whatever it is you care about or want to see get done. You know, that's just kind of how it goes. As far as, you know, like when you think about it, like the prophet said, that we got to take our place amongst the affairs of men, right? We must first know about our birthright, nationality, you know, and our heritage, so that we can take our place amongst the affairs of men. And so often we want to know what to do next without paying attention to the first part, you know, which is to declare and proclaim your nationality. And when, you know, a lot of times we sit back and want to jump the gun or we want to get ahead, what have you, we often miss the mark because we haven't taken care of those basic steps. Or you leave something out, you forget something, you know, what have you. So we shout out to everybody that's in the chat with me, that's in the classroom now. But you often run into an issue of competency. Right, just overall competency, being aware, a general awareness is lacking, and that general awareness can only be changed with, you know, a broad set of studies, general studies. And I got a brother, you know, who I was hoping I could get in. I got a couple people I was hoping I could get in on the class this evening to check in with you guys. But they may or may not make it in, what have you. But and thank you if you just joined us. We're about to enter a phase of things, if you guys haven't realized, where communication skills are going to be pertinent. All right, our ability to think is going to be very important. Like, not just thinking and being able to get to the answer, but being able to get to the answer in a reasonable amount of time, right? A certain level of proficiency is going to be required of those of us who, you know, claim to want to take our place amongst the affairs of men, right? So, in preparation for that, we've been, you know, doing what we can to raise the consciousness of the people. But the people themselves, right, to reiterate my earlier points, the people themselves have to recognize the role that they play in this, okay? Because if you don't, then you're constantly going to be on the sideline and, you know, be in the background wondering, what if? Okay? And, in terms of like just opening thoughts and whatnot for this class and like what I wanted to say, because it has been a while since I did the class. People been asking me, whatnot, but I told y'all this is going to happen. But really, really and truly, don't be so caught up in the newness of anything. Don't be so caught up in the veneer or the look of things. Be caught up in the function. You know what I mean? More so than the form. All right? What is the ultimate utility of whatever it is that you're looking at or dealing with? And if you can't figure that out in a reasonable amount of time, then you may want to, just put it off to the side or, put it up on the shelf somewhere for a little minute till you find some utility for it. But also keep in mind that if you're dealing with something, especially like more science, and you're trying to apply it, you cannot do it in the same mindset that you had when you first started out. Because the mindset that you had when you first started out didn't know how to apply any of this. You were completely unfamiliar with how things operated. So it's important to understand and overstand who you are first, if for nothing else, but to understand and get a clue about how you learn, right? Like how your brain digests information and is able to, either compartmentalize, synthesize, that information into a usable form, or format. And without question or doubt in my mind, studying is the best route. Which the old adage of the prophet, study, 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 again, often comes to mind because it rings true, right? In that when you study something that first go around, then the second go around, then that third, there should be things, what should be happening in between each study session is that you're taking notes as you're reading, or listening, what have you. And then after that study session, after you've taken those notes and you've put those things down for a bit, you come back to it, maybe the next day or the next week or whatever with fresh eyes, rested, right? And review what you did. Just look at what you've already accomplished. Okay? And same thing with the second round. Okay? And then you get to that third study, and then by that third go around, you hopefully will have a totally different perspective on whatever it is you're dealing with. Okay? And the reason why I'm going over these, common sense basic things, believe it or not, is because most people, like I said, like to seemingly skip over these steps. And then, when you hear the sob stories from people, from different Moors, they will tell you, they wish they would have paid attention. They wish they would have taken it more serious earlier on, And like one Moor was telling me, it was, he reminded me of the conversation that I had with him when I, was first more expressive about, the science and whatnot in terms of like where I was at and, trying to get people on board, things of that sort. And, I felt I was almost a zealot, so to speak. And some people think that's a good word or a bad, whether you think it's good or bad. But I think that's just, whatever. Anyway, you get to a point where you're realizing that, all right, I could tell 100 people who don't, who out of that 100, maybe 5 actually care. You know what I mean? And actually care, want to continue the conversation beyond, a couple of words and, oh, that's nice, And then you got the rest of the people who, who are just there, like they just kind of give you those looks and blank stares and Oh, you know, and it's the nonverbal communication that tells you a lot about what someone thinks and, you know, what they're not saying and what they're really wanting to say and things of that sort, so on and so forth. But keep in mind, right, you get to a point where you as an individual have to, you know, take it a little bit more serious and realize, all right, I'm just spinning my wheels on some of these things, and other things, you know, I can get more traction on, right? And let's call this, for the sake of conversation, low-hanging fruit, okay? The low-hanging fruit, for the sake of conversation, is, you know, like we said before, studying, declaring and proclaiming your nationality, right? Putting the parties on notice, right? With the various mental locations. Keeping track of whatever, you know, suits I want to, you know, initiate, or whatever issues I'm having. And really drilling down on, you know, the day-to-day things that help all of this, you know, go around, you know, and help your day-to-day sustenance. Because I think for some people, too often we get into a mode of panic because we go from one extreme to the next, you know, from one extreme to the next, and then the pendulum is just swinging, and then you just, you know, just woe out, you know, from going back and forth and back and forth. So it's like, all right, find a steady course of action and stick to it. Don't, you know, and I had to tell a couple more a couple weeks ago, whatever, empty your cup. You know, I completely understand, you know, or overstand that just coming into this, you want to, you know, take part and look at all the arrays of quote unquote consciousness that you think, you know, exist out here, you know, and the different methods of whatever it is you're trying to do. But realize that time that you're spending on those other things, those other topics, those other realms of knowledge could be better spent in an actual book, you know, getting the first-hand account for yourself. You know what I mean? Rather than getting it second-hand, third-hand, and then wondering whose hand it came from. You follow me? You know, and then when you get some bad information and, you know, stuff doesn't turn out right, you have no one else to blame but yourself. Because, you know, just like any real scholar will tell you, you got to get, you know, first-hand accounts. You got to get you got to get the right sources. You know, what's the source for the information? And so often, a lot of Negroes will ask Moors their sources for information without actually going to look up the sources that we gave you first. And it would be asinine of us to give you further information if you haven't already, you know, looked at what's already available to you. You know, now we could be naive, you know, and assume that you maybe have skipped over some things, or maybe that your eyes are not as strong as they, you know, the next person's, or maybe your comprehension skills just, you know, didn't allow you to focus on certain aspects, or you missed certain things, you know. But it's not good to assume. You follow me? But at the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about, and this is for those who are just checking in, talking about the basics and, you know, birthright, nationality, right? So when we're talking about, you know, doing all those things, you know, that keep everything going, taking care of those basics beforehand, if you do those things, right? If you start on that right now, if you start on developing those good patterns right now, you won't be in a state of panic come tomorrow or next week, right? Trying to figure out how to do everything. Everything you need, 9 times out of 10, for those who are just coming in, is on rvbaypublications.com, right? Now, you can listen to some old dirty Moors. You can listen to some, you know, some Negroes who don't know no better about your birthright and nationality, and you could assume their conclusions, and you would be wrong, right? But, you know, those of us who take the time out and, you know, to do our due diligence, to be scholarly, we will find certain things that may, reveal, I don't know, new thoughts, new horizons, new ideas, new concepts. And with those new ideas, new concepts, new thoughts, and new ideas, we can develop new thought patterns and frameworks. And out of those new thought patterns are derived new paradigms, right? Entire lifestyle changes can happen just with the change of thought, right? And, those, I should say, more mundane things that are less divine to our being are easily attainable at that point. Because we have some sense of structure, we have some sense of purpose, because we know how deep, we really know just how deep our roots go in this soil that we call Northwest Amexem, right? Or Alma Rock, North America, Northwest Africa, what have you, right? So I have a wonderful piece of literature in my hand. Brother Mizraim, Who Are Moors, Asiatics, Americans, right? Brother Mizraim Els authored this. This is part 2 of Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry? And in the first few pages, the author opens up touching on some very, very pertinent definitions that I really wanted to get on record for you guys. And if you would allow me, if you're watching this later and you just want to skip through this because you know this already, because you guys been studying and have at it probably about 5-10 minutes. But anyway, and if you're in the comments or whatever, put down below, tell them where to go after I'm done reading this. But anyway, so this is just from page 2 now, on the very, very beginning of the book. Not even done with the table of contents here, and he goes, and pardon me if I'm messing this up. Autochon. It's a noun, Greek. Autochon, sprung from the land itself, autos, self, and chthon, the earth, the ground. One of the aborigines of a country, comma, a man. So Autochon is one of the aborigines of a country. Autochon can be a man, an animal, or plant. So an Autochon can be a man, plant, or animal that's indigenous to the country or the soil, right? So the reference here is Source Common Law, Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, page 120. Definition of Autochon, right? Autochthonal, or autochthonic, aboriginal, primitive, native, indigenous, right? And this is, again, page 120 from Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. The words, and he goes on to say, the words, quote, quote, lineal heirs, like, quote, heirs of the body, mean all lineal descendants to the remotest posterity, and are words of inheritance and not of purchase. Reference source of law, this is coming from Henry Campbell's Law Black Dictionary. Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary of Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence, 4th edition, page 1079. Definition of lineal heir, all right? Then we've got the definition of Moor, right? Now, Moorish, dark, from impartial reference, a member of any of the Asian or African dark races, usually adopting the Mohammedan religion. In history, a Saracen or Arab. And this is coming out of Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, published 1936, right? Emphasis on the words any Asian and African, right? Now this is what I was more or less getting to, and this is kind of going to be the theme going forward for the rest of the class. And this class more or less is going to be a review. Now there was probably some difference between a Moor and a Saracen, although in heraldry, like the flags, heraldry, there does not seem to be much distinction. Originally Sharkinian, I believe, pardon me if I messed that up, an Arabian Yemen word signifying, quote, Eastern, quote, quote, Eastern people, and used in contradistinction to Maghreb, or Western people, or Maghribi, depending on how you pronounce it, the Moors of Morocco. While therefore all Saracens were Moors, all Moors were not necessarily Saracens, right? And this is coming out of Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1, page 238, right? So let me read that part again. So now there was probably some difference between a Moor and a Saracen. Although in heraldry, there does not seem to be much distinction. Originally, Sharkin, an Arabian Yemen word signifying Eastern people and used in contradistinction to Maghrib or Western people, the Moors of Morocco. While therefore all Saracens were Moors, all Moors were not necessarily Saracens. Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1, page 238. Right? So when they talk about, old man Cush and his son Ham, right? And the East and the West. And we're talking about Amexem, and you look at a map, if you generally take the Nile as a or Ethiopia, right, which means demarcation line, as a point of reference, okay, everything to the east of that, I believe, would be Kush, or fall under the Kushite Empire, and everything to the west, I believe, would fall under Old Man Ham and the Hamathites and the Hamite Empire. And the two, which of course was considered to be father and son, just based on that reference, are still one family. Okay. We as Moors here in Northwest Amexem recognize that we are in the Maghrib, or the farthest west, right? Kind of getting back into the same reference point here. There was another part in here that I was reviewing earlier and looking at, and I said, hey, I definitely want to talk about this. Let me see if I can find it right quick. All right, so I'll just go into it from where I'm looking at right here. Definition of Moor. Already got that. This information is intended to exhibit the attributes of what and who is a Moor, and what and who is American, and what and who is an Asiatic, in the principle of the maxim infra, the proprieties, i.e. proper meaning of words is to be observed. Reference source of international law, Jean Clark, Century 136. So this is coming out of John Bouvier's third edition, page 2155, definition of maxim. Now, with this point right here, as far as the proprieties or the proper meanings of the words, that's just, to keep in mind the importance of etymology and understanding, being able to follow the line of thinking as to where words come from, why certain parts are added, taken away, why the shifts come and go as they do. Okay? Now, kind of switching gears here, when Moors talk about notice, okay, and you talk about notice and serving things or whatever, what have you, you can't simply think that you're going to send it to one location and everything is going to be, hunky-dory, as some say, right? Because if you haven't figured it out by now, we're dealing with colonizers, anti-constitutionalists, tortfeasors, fraudsters, racketeers, and criminals, criminality in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And when that fact sinks in, that you're dealing with Klansmen, you may begin to wonder why you've been so naive for so long. If you've been naive at all, because you might have just been Johnny on the spot with it. But in that, in that thought, in that same breath, you cannot expect a benefit from someone who ultimately seeks your destruction. and seeks an end to you, as a people. So, it doesn't make much sense to, hold your head out, your hand out too long, and then, wait for it to get burnt. You follow me? And then wonder why they're dropping hot coals in your hand. It's, and then your hands also, you can't get nothing done, right? You can't feel nothing at that point because your hand's burnt. But anyway, like, you really don't waste your time, man. Don't spin your wheels waiting on the benefit when you could be out here getting it. You know what I mean? Taking your place amongst the affairs of men. This is, again, going back to the original, Spaces of Class, or at least my opening statements. As far as people being proactive, man, just be proactive ahead of time, and a lot of times you can avoid the problems that other people seem to run into just haphazardly. Kind of like when you're traveling in your land conveyance, and you don't look at the speedometer to see which way you're gonna go next. You look over the steering wheel. You follow me? You look over the dash, over the nose of the your land conveyance, out into the road, out into the distance. You got to keep your vision on something longer than what your car is, or your truck, or what have you, or van, bicycle, motorcycle, however you're rolling. Might be on a Segway, scooter, whatever. But I want to, of course, touch on some things. I think this is chapter 41, whatever XL1I is in Roman numerals. I'm not an expert, and I'm not trying to be right now. But I just wanted to read this chapter, Holy Instructions from the Prophet in Constancy, right? Because I was building with some Moors, and it's important to keep in mind not to, and this is just a personal thought, this is Nunaji speaking, this is not, general concepts from anybody else, but for me personally, it's important not to expect too much out of anybody, because we're all human, right? So just, don't get too gassed up about this stuff, man. Like, you have to take things at your own pace and at your own ability to digest them, right? But at the same time, you got to realize you ain't got much time to be playing around. How like, you can chew 100 times if you want to, or you can just not chew at all, you can swallow it, or you can go somewhere in between, maybe 50, 25, what have you. But whatever works for you to help you digest, you follow me, without choking. That makes sense. Islam, like, really take your time, because this is your movement. Now, if you want something done, you need to be proactive about getting it done, right? Don't wait on these old grand sheiks to do it, because obviously they either don't know how to do it, haven't thought about doing it, or they don't have the initiative to do it. So, you have either one or all three, or 2 out of 3, you do it, right? If you can't find a temple, you're the temple. You be it. You know what I mean? But you're going to have to, understand some administrative functions first. So that's why you study. So you know what to do when you do start operating and navigating that way, right? But getting into the chapter and the reading, sorry for the aside, inconstancy. Nature urgeth thee to inconstancy, O man. Therefore guard thyself at all times against it. Thou art from the womb of thy mother, various and wavering. From the loins of thy father inherited thou instability. How then shalt thou be firm? Those who give thee a body furnished it with weakness, but he who gave thee a soul armed thee with resolution. Employ it, and thou art wise. Be wise, and thou art happy. Let him who doeth well beware how he boasteth of it, for rarely is it of his own will. It is not the event of an impulse, from without, born of uncertainty, enforced by accident, dependent on somewhat else, to thee and to accident is due the praise. So it's like you can't blame nobody but yourself, whether good or bad, right? Beware of irresolution in the intent of thy actions. Beware of instability in the execution. So shalt thou triumph over two great failings of thy nature. What reproacheth reason more than to act contrarieties. So it's a question. It's a question mark after that. So let me reread it. What reproacheth reason more than to act contrarieties? What can suppress the tendencies to these but firmness of mind? The inconstant fleeth that he changeth, but he knoweth not why. He seeth that he escapeth from himself, but he perceiveth not how. Be thou incapable of change in that which is right, and men will rely upon thee. Establish upon thyself principles of action, and see that thou ever act according to them. So shall thy passions have no rule over thee. So shall thy constancy ensure unto thee the good thou possesseth, and drive from thy door misfortune. Anxiety and disappointment shall be strangers to thy gates. Suspect not evil in anyone until thou seeth it. When thou seest, forget it not. Whoso hath been an enemy cannot be a friend, for man mendeth not his faults. Verse 13, if y'all following along with me, how should his actions be right, who hath no rule of his life? Nothing can be just which proceedeth not from reason. The inconstant hath no peace in his soul, neither can be a case with whom he concerneth himself with. His life is unequal, his motions are irregular, his soul changeth with the weather. Today he loveth thee, tomorrow thou art destined by him. And why? Himself knoweth not wherefore he now hateth. Like you at that point you so caught up, you really don't know why you hating or what you hating, but you just disappointed in yourself. And we've all been there. When we wanted to do certain things or we wanted to get stuff done and we just, didn't get it done and kept pushing it back, what have you. And then, you look up and it's too late. And then it's, it's all over but the crying at that point. And there's no use crying over spilled milk, right? So anyway, let me go back to verse 13. How should his actions be right, who hath no rule of his life? Nothing can be just which proceedeth not from reason. All right, nothing can be just if it doesn't come from reason. The inconstant hath no peace in his soul, neither can be at ease with whom he concerneth himself with. His life is unequal, his motions are irregular, his soul changes with the weather. Today he loveth thee, tomorrow thou art detested by him. And why? Himself knoweth not wherefore he now hateth. Today he is the tyrant, tomorrow thy servant is less humble. And why? Who is arrogant without power will be servile while there is no subjection. Now, that's very important. That's a very important point to keep in mind. He who is arrogant without power will be servile while there is no subjection. Islam. That's why the prophet asks for active Moors and not passive Moors. Caveat emptor. Islam. Today he is profuse, tomorrow he grudgeth upon his mouth that which it should eat. Thus it is with him who knoweth not moderation. Who shall say of the chameleon, quote, he is black, when the moment after the vendor of the grass overspreadeth him, when the vendor of the grass overspreadeth him? Who shall say of the inconstant, quote, he is joyful, when his next breath shall be spent in sighing? What is the life of such a man but the phantom of a dream? In the morning he riseth happy, at noon he is on the rack. This hour he is a god, the next below a worm. One moment he laugheth, the next he weepeth. He now willeth, in an instant he willeth not, and in another he knoweth not whether he willeth or not. Yet neither ease nor pain have fixed themselves unto him. Neither is he waxed greater or become less. Neither hath he had cause for laughter or reason for his sorrow. Therefore shall none of them abide with him. The happiness of inconstant is as a palace built on the surface of the sad. The blowing of the wind carrieth away its foundation. I think that might be sand. I think that might be a typo, pardon me. Instead of said. What wonder then that it falleth? But what exalted from form is this, that hitherward, y'all pardon me, this is some old writing style, that hitherward directs its uninterpreted course, whose foot is on earth, whose head is above the clouds. On his brow sitteth majesty. Steadiness is in his port, and in his heart reigneth tranquility. Though obstacles appear in his way, he deighteth not to look down upon them. Though heaven and earth oppose his passage, he proceedeth. The mountains sink beneath his tread. The waters of the ocean are dried up under the sole of his foot. The tiger throweth herself across his way in vain. The spots of the leopard glow against him unregarded. He marcheth through the embattled legions. With his hands he putteth aside the terrors of death. Storms roar against his shoulders, but are not able to shake them. The thunder bursteth over his head in vain. The lightning severeth below the show to show the glories of his countenance. His name is resolution. He cometh from the utmost part of the earth. He seeth happiness afar off before him. His eye discovereth her temple beyond the limits of the pole. He walketh up to it. He entereth boldly, and he remaineth there forever. Establish thy heart, O man, in that which is right, and then know the greatest of human is to be immutable. Right? Because of the fact that we have been subjected to generations, right? A number of generations, we'll say, of mental and physical, economic, social, political, civic, so on and so forth, etc., oppression, in many forms, from extreme to mild, and the most mild you could think of, to the point that they today call them microaggressions, right? But when we observe the effects of this oppression and the need of overstanding and acting upon nationality and birthrights, or realizing the fact that, all right, you've been through this oppression, and as a result of this oppression, you have been separated from your nationality, which entitles you to your birthrights and your heritage and culture. And with that, right, encompassed within that, that conversation and that topic is the title to your vast estate, right? And access to your vast estate. Open, free access. Ingress, regress, all of that good stuff. To come, go as you please, okay? To navigate at will, without permission, right? Over land, sea, air. These, to build a home where you want to live, so long as it doesn't interfere with your fellow man or your peers, more so, to be specific. These are the basics of society that we're talking about, right? And we're talking about that Constitution being a living will, all right? Keeping in mind Article 6 and the treaty clause within it. Keeping in mind, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, that Indians is a misnomer, and it's really, you know, talking about Moors or the copper-complected people who were found here in the Americas prior to the European. Let me see if I can get the... Yep, here we go. American now. Oh, shouts out again. Who are Moors? Are you denying your ancestry? Part 2. Brother Mizraim Ill. Page 5. American now. An aboriginal or anyone of the various copper-colored natives found on the continent by Europeans. The original application of the word, Webster's 1936, 20th century, unabridged dictionary, page 53. Definition of Moor, any dark-skinned person, right? That's coming out of Barry W. Encyclopedia. Heraldic gives some derivatives of Moor as Morand, Morel, Morica, Morlat, Mormand, Moriac, going on. Moors are just Americans. Reference letters to the editor. Evening Journal, Wilmington, Delaware, February 11th, 1972, page 22. Moro noun comes from Spanish, Moro, Moorish. Webster's International Dictionary. Now let me back up here. Now this is on page 4. So 1880. So this is the year. I think this is Larceny Lorden Dictionnaire de Noms, page 326, 336, 337. 1880 gives the following derivatives of Moor. Moray, of Moorish origin or with skin brown like that of a Moor. Synonyms: Morel. I'm going to spell each one of these just so y'all can look them up. Morel, M-U-R-E-L. Maurice, M-A-U-R-I-C-E. And these are all synonyms of Moor. All right. Maurice, M-A-U-R-I-C-E. Morand, M-A-U-R-A-N-D. Morant, right? M-A-U-R-A-N-T. Maury, M-A-U-R-Y. Morin, M-A-U-R-I-N. Moritz, M-A-U-R-I-T-Z. Moran, M-O-R-A-N. Morand, M-O-R-A-N-D. Morard, M-O-R-A-R-D. More, M-O-R-E, or Moray. Moreau, M-A-R-E-A-U. Moreau with an X, or M-O-R-E-A-U-X. Right? Moricard, M-O-R-R-I-C-A-R-D. Lemor, L-E-M-O-R. Lemoroc, L-E-M-O-R-C. And Elmer, L-Mer, E-L-M-E-R. Right? All of these heraldic names or family names are derivatives of Moor or Moorish. Right? And before we talked about the Saracens and the Arabs and how, you know, or the Saracens and the Moors rather, and how all Saracens were Moors, but all Moors were not necessarily Saracens. Right? And if my research serves me correctly, the Saracens typically would be your roving bandits, so to speak, as they would say, but they really were just nomads. They were just of a nomadic nature of life. It didn't really have too much of a hunter-gatherer type of civilization. And then you had other Moors who were into navigation, and they built ships and boats, and they would, you know, go to trade and navigate, you know, just to see things. But we got a lot of ways. Saracen is spelled, I want to make sure I get it right for you guys. Saracen, S-A-R-A-C-E-N. And you know, Saracen or Arab. And you'll typically find Moorish history under those, you know, you'll find us under those names. Right? And another line of thinking I wanted to touch on for you guys right quick is this part right here. While Moors, Americans, called Asiatics if America and Morocco are not Asia. Right? And our author, Brother Mizraim, goes on to say, a great and common question. Let's start by exposing the etymology of the word angel or Asiatic. What is an Asiatic or an angel? Question 38. What is an angel? So this is coming referencing the Moorish Quran questionnaire 101, which, matter of fact, I printed out me a copy this week. Shouts out to Khalifa Media. This is Taida doing the wonderful things over there at Khalifa Media, publishing works. I don't want to waste no time, but 77 Amazing Facts About the Moors. Brother Rami Salam Il and Brother Cujo out with Il. Definitely check that out. But the Quran questions, I'm looking for a particular question. I want to say it's 38. Yep, 38. And I'm using this just so, you know, I can show you guys. It'll be a little bit bigger print, hopefully. Alright, so 38. What is an angel? An angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh, right? Show you guys in number 38. Alright. Boom. Boom. Alright. I think y'all got that. Y'all can fix that. Alright. So 38. 39. What are angels used for? Answer: to carry messages to the four corners of the world, to all nations. Right? So keep that in mind. Now, question 60. Right? Who is guarding the holy city of Mecca today to keep the unbelievers away? Answer: angels. Right? And all of those who study and know, you know, the holy city of Mecca today would be Chicago. Right? 61. Or the area commonly known as Chicago. What is the modern name of those angels? Answer: Asiatics. 63. Are the Moorish Americans any relation to those angels? Yes. We all have the same mother and father. Right? Asia was originally a concept of Western civilization. The place named Asia in various forms in a large number of modern languages is of unknown ultimate provenance. Its etymology and language of origin are uncertain. It appears to be one of the most ancient of recorded names. Right? Now, when we start talking about here we go, page 12, special reference, going back to question 39. All right, so we're going back to question 39. What are angels used for? To carry messages to the four corners of the world, to all nations. Right? Emphasis, keep in mind the four corners where messengers, the angels are messengers, or used to carry messages rather, to the four corners of the earth. All right. We see the evidence in the language. This is coming from page 12. We see the evidence in the language. We look at the farthest northwest corner of the planet Earth, Western Hemisphere, America, Al-Marac, or A-L-M-A-R-A-C. The terrain is known as Alaska, or Al-Aska, derivative of the Arabic Asiatic appellation Al-Aqsa, right? And that's A-Q-S-A. So Alaska, A-L-A-S-K-A, or A-L-A-S-K-A, is a derivative of the Arabic Asiatic appellation Al-Aqsa, A-L space capital A-Q-S-A. All right? Oh, we got a question in the chat. Hold on. You got it, brother? Brother Bilal? Now, so the etymology of Morocco translates to the Arabic al-Maghrib or al-Maghribia, al-Amaruk, which simply means the West Maghrib, Maghrib al-Aqsa, right? Or Morocco, America, the most extreme West. This is evidence of the word al-Aska or al-Aqsa, or so you got the A-L. Show you guys. Yeah. So you got Alaska. You got Al-Aqsa. For you guys over here. Alright. Simple change in play on the letters here, or transliteration for those who are scholars. On the farthest northwest corner of the earth, America is the West, the wild, wild West, Morocco. As an important note of misconception of Arabs, there is no such thing as a pale-skinned Arab. In the same way as there is no such thing as a pale-skinned American. This is based on fact, not opinion, nor emotion. Right? So I wanted to touch on that just to get some things on the record for you guys to kind of clear up the whole America, Northwest Amexem, North America line of conversation and thinking, because there's a lot of, counterintelligence going on. I guess that's the best way to put it. And a lot of false flags and fake news, alternative facts, and what have you. The fact is, we're still dealing with colonists. Like I said before, we're still dealing with Ku Klux Klansmen. So keep in mind who's saying what, and where it's coming from before you take something and run with it. Use your thinker. Think before you act. And as always, study. So right now, I wanna just, because it's coming up on 8:05, I wanna open the floor up for questions, brother. If you wanna turn your video on, open up your mic. The floor is open for questions and comments. And while that's going on, I'll just be looking up some things. And today I really did just wanted to actually I do need to go over the homework. That's something else I need to touch on. The homework, that's what I forgot. So because we previously had scheduled this class, and I had a whole plan and all of that, but some of the best laid plans go out the window when you're inspired, right? So we might just touch on this a little bit more next time. But for those who aren't, linked in with us, go in. Oh, I might be able to touch this real quick. I get this pulled up. So if you wanna, if you're not linked in with the class or whatever, you can't see the screen. The case is Shelby County State Bank versus Van Dyce Supply Company, and it is a Supreme Court case that comes out of Illinois, I believe. Yeah. The site for it is 303 F 3rd District 832. And looking for this book where I'm gonna read it from. So I want you guys to be aware of something, okay? Because you're not getting the basics because you guys are not studying. You're not reading. You're not reading Barbary treaties. All right. What about the Barbary treaties? Please make a question out of that for me while I go over this. So this is kind of touching on the homework. If you guys read the case, then you got way more than what I'm finna give you. But Contra Proferentem is between two parties to a contract. There is another doctrine that often resolves ambiguities. It is the rule requiring that ambiguous language must be construed against its drafter. Not only should the drafter be penalized by bearing its cost ex post of having cut corners ex ante, the penalty of interpretation against the drafter also aims to avoid overbearing behavior between contracting parties, where the drafter, often the one in the better bargaining position, tries to pull a fast one over the party who can merely accept or reject the contract as a whole. Although this doctrine of Contra Proferentem is perhaps on the wane in some jurisdictions, it is some jurisdictions is alive and well in Iowa, right? And this was an Iowa case, probably, more than likely. Unlike many jurisdictions that regulate the Contra Proferentem rule to the status of tiebreaker, Iowa takes a strong view of the rule, holding that ambiguous language is to be, quote, strictly construed against the drafter. And choosing among reasonable meanings, that meaning is generally preferred, which operates against the party who supplies the words. All right. And now I'm just reading the thought or the section right here. Here, the drafting party was Van Dyce. It was Van Dyce that was trying to obtain a security interest in certain properties of Hennings in order to protect its advances to the latter. At least if this were a case against Hennings, the use of Contra Proferentem rule would provide a way out of the ambiguity in the key contractual language. Construing it against Van Dyce, the security interest extends only to the products Van Dyce sold to Hennings, not to all inventory. It is not such a case, however, so we turn to the final consideration that persuades us. All right, so that's just dicta from the court. Let me find Peter's all the Barbary treaties. You can find the Barbary treaties online if you go to Cornell's website, the Cornell Law School. I believe it's called the Avalon Project. They've got all of the treaties on there for free, as well as the background information. So, the principle of Contra Proferendum, as it states in the case law, right, that it's a rule requiring that ambiguous language must be construed against its drafter, right? So when you get these form contracts with boilerplate language on it, realize that the information is construed generally against whoever drafted it. When you're sending out the writs, whatever it is that you wrote in there is generally going to be construed against you at that point, because you are the one who's bringing the argument. You're bringing the case or the suit, right? Or you're challenging the case or the suit from a defensive position. But then you go on the offensive once you start charging people. You have to know what you're doing. It's not incumbent upon Moorish to teach you steps 5, 6, and 7 when you haven't done steps 1 and 2. It's not incumbent for anybody to teach you how to mess yourself up, all right, or how to get yourself into trouble when you've gotten or to get yourself out of trouble when you've gotten yourself into trouble, all right. That's what studying and living life accordingly is about. But if you've fallen off of the beaten path, you should be able to figure your way back if you've been paying attention to what we've been talking about in the past classes leading up to now, right? Status is the first issue, and everything else comes after that, right? That's it as far as how Moors are interacting with these foreign tribunals. Now, like I said, we're coming to a point here where we're going to be moving a little bit faster than what I know a lot of you guys have been used to. And, unfortunately, we don't have time to waste any further. Okay? We have to step it up entirely. We have to step up our, dedication to this movement. We have to step up our focus on what our role is going to be in the movement, and actually focus on being that. Okay? So if you were a mechanic before you knew Moorish science, you can still be a mechanic, but you'll be a Moorish mechanic now. You follow me? Like, it's not that big of a leap or a hurdle. Okay, if you were an actuary before, you're a Moorish actuary. Okay, now some job titles may change, but the work is typically going to be the same. All right. The way that you do the job, or the way that you set up your business, should be through your trust, if you've been paying attention, right? Which should be, set up with your family or whoever it is that you trust and love. But that's the modus operandi 9 times out of 10. Now, if you're doing something else, right? If you're not going to operate within the trust, if you're just going to be out here by yourself, well, then you need to know what it is you're going to be doing and be the best darn person at doing it. And there's something for those who are unfamiliar with the business world. There's something called Six Sigma, right? That you can use as a template for your business. And there's, there's a free jewel right there. But that way you don't have to bog yourself down with all of the ins and outs of a process in terms of the financial aspects of it, and the waiting, for certification, things of that sort. If you just certify yourself, or if you as organized body politic, focus on a particular issue, develop some research, or actually pull some research to back up whatever it is you're talking about, and then implement it. Do that which you care about to take your place amongst the affairs of men. And when I say men, I'm being unisex about it, men and women. But these are just ideas, right? Rather than waiting on something that's not going to come, or a hope and a prayer out in the ether somewhere. And I know last class I was talking about manifestation and everything, but before that happens, before whatever it is you're trying to manifest materializes, deal with what you've got in front of you first, because I'm pretty sure if you take inventory on what you have, you will find out 9 times out of 10 that you have more than enough to get started. But so often, like we were talking about the inconstancy of man, we go from one extreme, like I was saying earlier, we go from one extreme to the next, one extreme to the next, trying to do everything at once. And it doesn't, life doesn't happen that way. It just doesn't. You don't wake up one day and you're a brain surgeon, right? So where do we draw the line between religion and politics as Moorish brothers and sisters? You draw the line between religion and politics at what the prophet said. It's the Moorish divine and national movement of the world, or Moorish divine and national movement. There's a divine side and there's a national side, right? You follow me? Open your mic up. Just talk. Brother Bilal. He's typing. You can turn your mic off and open it up. Islam?
Peace.
Peace.
Yes, it's just a lot of background. The feedback's gonna be like.
Say it again?
I said it's just a lot of background noise. I don't know what the feedback's gonna be like.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll mute my mic out so you can ask your question.
Yeah, but I was wondering where does one draw the line between, what I meant by that question is basically like there's a lot of just like the term a prophet itself has like religious context, and I mean it's easy to overlook it. It's really not that big of a deal, but for people who have a difficulty taking in the concepts because they have their religious obligations in some cases. I was just wondering, what do you personally suggest to other people when they're having that problem with not being too focused on the mysticism side as far as Noble Drew Ali is concerned, and not focusing too much on the African mysticism, and focusing more on the politics of the situation?
All right. So just before you go, just so I make sure I understand the question.
You still need it.
Oh, my bad. All right. So just make sure I understand the question. You're wanting to know how I would personally draw the line between someone who can't see past the religious side of things versus the political side of things.
Yeah, and how can one remain with in context of their own religion and still be able to grow to their full potential as a political entity as far as naturalization and birthright are concerned.
All right. I think I got that one. All right. So the thing is, the interesting thing is, most of the time when we talk about politics and religion, we're doing it under the concept that there is a separation between church and state, right? And if we do, our research and our background studies, we find out that there is no such thing as a separation between church and state. Okay? Because the hearts and minds of the people, like I said, they go from one thing to the next. So, man has his common duties, his everyday tasks, but then man, has his period of rest and reflection. So with life comes challenges, right? Some challenges may be better suited, based on actual action, and others may be better suited to be, handled through reflection, or just rest, R&R. So for people who can't see, I guess, the fine line between the two, think about it like, all right, you go to work, say 9 to 5, right? But after work, you may have children, right? You still have to raise those children to be good, productive members of society, okay? And in doing that, part of their, education would be to give them some sense of, the basics, right? You eat, you sleep, you go to the bathroom, what have you. Just so that you can interact with people and not be looked at as a weirdo, right? Then there's other levels that you would teach that, there's other things in life that you would teach that child so that they could be able to take care of themselves, right? Like how to put on their clothes and actually how to bathe themselves, like, and brush their teeth, okay? And though they can seem cosmetic, they ultimately go to the betterment of how, we live. Those things go to the betterment of just, life overall, right? But when it comes to the other things that support that, right? The ability to do that, it's the hard work. It's the fact that you work that 9 to 5. You know what I mean? You go to work, you do your job, right? It's a physical requirement of you. And if you want to look at it from a biblical standpoint, when we fail from knowledge or whatever, and this is just for quantitative, understanding, I'm not really trying to get into no deep metaphysical debate about it, but as men, and as human beings, when we fail from knowledge of self, from our true knowledge of self or Godhood, part of the curse that it talks about in Genesis is that man is forced to toil and work the earth, right? So we're required to do some type of labor, some type of work. We have to produce something in this life, right? And in doing that, we have to do business, we have to interact, we have to exchange. And what allows business to go forward or to happen in a smooth, manner is the general understanding that people have of the law, right? And let's just say, for the sake of conversation, the law of contracts, okay? If we're having a contractual dispute, okay, under the Constitution, if there is diversity of jurisdiction, however that diversity is created, typically between members of different states, all right, we might have a federal question, and then, there's certain civic things now that we're talking about that come into play. There's certain governmental principles that are now coming into action, all right, in real live time, okay, that has nothing to do with spirituality, right, or ethics. This is just the bare meat and potatoes of it. You got to have food on the table, period. All right? You can't get from point A to point B, without somebody telling you that you got to pay a toll now. Now these things aren't normal. I'm not saying that this is how it's supposed to be, but this is just dealing with the realities as they are. Okay. And I forget where in the literature it is, but the theme some kind of goes like this: for man to ever get to the deific life that he ever hopes to get to, you have to have the basics taken care of. You got to have home on lock, right? And shouts out to Brother Red Pill and Blue Pill. You got to secure the bag, all right? Otherwise, you're not eating, right? That has nothing to do with your personal relationship with Allah, God, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, whoever else, right? Because you're worried about living right now, not the afterlife. Spirituality is often said to be for those who are worried about the afterlife, but when you really understand it and the importance of spirituality, like I was talking about all those things that go to the betterment of your life, you find out that having a spiritual relationship and being spiritual just goes to general betterment of your life. The emotional, mental stability of who you are, your psyche, right? Without getting too deep into it. And the two, divine, national, right? Quote unquote religion, which religion really, when you get into the etymology of the word, and I really should have started with this, the etymology of religion is to realign oneself, all right, with something, preferably the culture, right? One's ancient foremothers and forefathers. So when Moors talk about religion, we're not talking about the Father, Son, and the Holy Mary who got turned into a ghost. All right, we're talking about the sun, the moon, right? The various planets, which have a certain geomagnetic, thermodynamic potentiality that exists, right, in real time, and that interacts with the human body in real time at not only a cellular level but a glandular, level, okay, and can cause, various ebbs and flows of the different chemicals that are present within the human body. And this has a certain electromagnetic pull or push that can cause a mental change. And, when you start getting into metaphysics, you start, finding out about the ethers and all of that good stuff. And you find the mental connection to these things. It's through the science of religion, right, that these things have been broken down and turned into systems of government, right, to regulate the activities of the masses. And that's why, the priesthood is dead at the end of the day. Because once you get to that point of realizing that connection is one, always and always, always has and always will be present, okay? And furthermore, you understand that if it's always been there, it's not going anywhere, so you're always connected. And then you get that relationship, you start to see the correlations between that spiritual, quote unquote religious relationship between you, the universe, yourself, right? And you start seeing those correlations between that and quote unquote government, right? To where the two really are kind of one and the same, and you start getting into the concept, the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. Right? You start to see the correspondences. So there's not really at that point a separation between religion or politics. There's only confusion, and then there's a lot of space, so there's, you know, there may be some gray areas, but there's really no difference. You follow me? I open the floor back up.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I had a second question, which was, given that the treaties in which that we stand on to give us our birthright.
The treaties don't give us our birthright; they secure them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the treaties that secure our birthrights predate the Moorish Temple of Science. Is it because most of the nationalization documents start off with the heading of the Moorish Temple of Science? Is that pretty much just who supports our movement, more so than what solidifies our birthright, or how is that? Like, what is that balance like?
All right, so when you're talking about the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Holy Moorish Divine National Movement, that is first a movement, but anciently, like, it was a movement to reconnect us with who we are, right? And I'm gonna get into the oral statements and prophecies, and maybe this will do more justice than what I'm about to do. No, hold on, not that. 1 second, I gotta find it. So the Moorish literature. All right. All right. This. All right. All right, so prophet makes plea to nation. All right, well, let me go back. And I'm gonna read the whole divine warnings because I think this is gonna explain a little bit better. And then we'll go from there. So short answer is it's government, right? It's supposed to be your government. The temples operate as the Moorish consulates, or the embassies, the various regencies, right, that you would interact with, be able to gain asylum from if you were, you know, something was happening or whatever, that was life or death. You know, it's where you would have your marriages, you know, it's where you would do your funerals and things of that sort. But it's a general meeting ground, but then it's also, it also could be used as a courtroom. You know, in terms of what the physical building of the temple is. You know, the Moorish Science Temple, what the temples are supposed to be used for. You know, the bank. You know what I mean? Because once you start going to the temples through the administrative functions, you're supposed to have the emergency fund. You know, each individual is supposed to be able to have an emergency fund that they pay into every month, and if something happens, they can withdraw from that emergency fund, right, at no interest. So, you know, it could operate as a bank, a school, you know what I mean? You know, during the week, the temples are supposed to be teaching, it's supposed to be a full-fledged school, so they're supposed to be K through 12 at least, and then as well as the college courses are supposed to be offered through the temples, right? But these things aren't so today because the Moors of, you know, years past and yesterday and today who are in the positions, right, have not done these things up until now. Okay? So when we're wondering why the temples don't function this way, it's because, you know, the inconstancy of man, yet again. You know? So hopefully the divine warning by the prophet for the nations will help, you know, unfold this answer a little bit more. The citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitution, are all of one family bearing one free national name. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and the principles that delude to slavery. I, the prophet, was prepared by the great God Allah to warn my people to repent from their sinful ways and go back to that state of mind of their forefathers' divine and national principles, that they will be law abiders and receive their divine right as citizens, right? According to the free national constitution that was prepared for all free national beings. Talking about the Constitution, right? As the divine Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution. You can look at them as one document, right? Divine and national principles that they will be law abiders and receive their rights as citizens according to the free national constitution that was prepared for all free national beings. They are to claim their own free national name and religion, right? So getting back to your point as far as religion, you can practice whatever form of religion you want to, right? The Moorish Science Temple teaches that our religion is Islamism, which is an acronym for I, self-law, and master in science and mathematics. All right? Which, if you understand that, that's not religion, that's science and mathematics. Islam. And there's no spookism in that. It's really about measurement and being able to really look at some things, do some scientific data, look at the controls, and really get, see what you come back with. Not just conjecture, not just a hope, not just putting faith in it, but actually believe, faith, belief, and then coming to fruition, all right, or manifestation of that which you hypothesized, thought about, dreamed about, whatever. So they are to claim their own free national name and religion, right? So keep in mind, there is but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine national movement, right? So in these days and times, from the prophet's times, 1913, when we were coming out of slavery, and we were still, when in masses, in the mass, we were still calling ourselves Negroes, blacks, coloreds, right? Before African Americans was even on the map, right? Before it was Afro Americans, Negroes, blacks, and coloreds, was synonymous, and that's what we was calling ourselves. And the prophet was letting the people know that it was through the connection to the Moorish divine national movement that the rest of the world was going to recognize them, because the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, was recognized already internationally and by the world as the prophet for his people. You follow me? He had already done the work. When you go into, how he went east and whatnot and traveled amongst the wise men, so to speak, and came out of the mystery schools, and he was given the keys and told, basically, hey, give this back to your people. Give this to the Asiatics, right? We, and like the prophet said, if you're going to imitate anybody, imitate him. Because when you really get into it, right, if you understand metaphysics of it, and you understand, Buddha and incarnation, right, the spirit of Jesus, the spirit of Buddha, the spirit of Muhammad, the spirit of Noble Drew Ali are all one and the same, right? And when we get into the one-on-ones, it tells us what a prophet is. And I know you didn't really want to get too much into it, but I feel like it needed to be highlighted. So the one-on-one is number 11, right? Or let me go back to number 5. Who is Drew Ali? Who Who is Noble Drew Ali? Answer, he is Allah's prophet. 6, what is a prophet? A prophet is a thought of Allah manifested in flesh. 7, what is the duty of a prophet? To save nations from the wrath of Allah. Who is the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America? Noble Drew Ali, right? And we jump down. Our religion is Islamism. Is that a new or is that an old-time religion? Old-time religion, right? Backing up to number 16, or better yet, number 14, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans born in America. Number 15, for what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple founded? The answer, for the uplifting of fallen humanity, right? And when we look on the cover of the 101s, and the reason why I printed it out like this is so that we can see that the prophet is holding a woman, and right across her womb is written the word humanity, okay? And the prophet has one foot in the waters, which is representative of the cares of the world, and his right foot on solid ground, or that of salvation. All right. So, you know, to kind of reveal some information and kind of I hope answer the question more so as to what you were asking. Could you repeat the question?
The question essentially was, given that the treaties predate the Moorish Science Temple, or Moorish Temple,
Moorish Holy Temple of Science.
Yeah, Moorish Holy Temple of Science.
Mm-hmm.
And that most of the documents are headed with the Moorish Temple of Science. Is it more so the treaties, or in other words, is the Moorish Temple of Science a part of what gives us our birthright / nationality?
All right, your nationality comes from your bloodline, right? The treaties, the Constitution, the Moorish Divine and National Movement, the temples, you know, all of those are just forms, right? These are platforms to gain the information, to be reconnected to that which you did not know, which is the truth about your birthright and nationality. All right? But go from there.
So basically, like in my case, for example, I'm Muslim, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the last prophet to walk the earth. So like the idea of Drew Ali being a prophet is problematic as a Muslim, but being just an intelligent being, I'm able to take that and translate it to it being, like you said earlier, useful information. So basically, like you said, Drew Ali brought us the truth about our nationality. So I'm trying to digest and be able to transform this information to being, like you said, aligned with what in history predates Noble Drew Ali and his teachings. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like the idea of Allah and our us being as human beings, the visurgence of the earth, and being able to go to and fro freely without question, and the different what gives authority, who gives authority. Only Allah gives authority. Mm-hmm. And that constitution being that understanding of us between human beings as to how we're going to govern ourselves. Anything under that being null and void. All of that makes perfect sense. It's easy to digest. But what I'm trying to, as I come into birthright and bloodline, how do I continue to move forward and digest that information where I see flaws and in some cases falsehoods. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
but it answered my question. It was a matter of it really doesn't matter, essentially. You know what I mean? Those metaphysical details only matter to self. It doesn't really matter to the concept. You know what I mean? That's something on the like you said, on the divine and nation. You know what I'm saying? As far as the nationality is concerned, that has to do with physicality, with, you know, the bloodline, where you come from, you know, what rights you have based on those precepts and treaties and such. And then the divine side is you know, how you carry yourself, you know, in which ways you decide to serve the law, so on and so forth. Those things, you know, as far as Moorish Temple of Science, right? Moorish Temple of Science?
Moorish Holy Science Temple, Moorish Science Temple of America, Moorish Holy Science Temple. You know, is either one was 1913, the other one they claim 1928 and 1926. There's a lot of different variations.
As far as those things are concerned, it only matters to individuals to the extent, you know, that is within them or with their alignment. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, you could sum it up and say it only matters that much, but I know some more who not gonna make that summation.
Well, yeah, I know. And that's what I was trying to. I'm trying to figure out how to.
So one thing that I think will help is to keep in mind and recognize that when Moors talk about Moorish science and Islam, this is not the Islam of the East, right? And when we talk about the origins, most Moors will take you to chapter 47 of the Divine, not Divine Constitution, but the Holy Quran, Moorish Science Temple of America, and it talks about where we come from as Muslims in these lands, right? So it says the divine origin of the Asiatic nations. The fallen sons and daughters of the Asiatic nation of North America need to learn to love instead of hate, and to know of their higher self and lower self. This is the uniting of the Holy Quran of Mecca for teaching and instructing all Moorish Americans, etc. The key of civilization was and is in the hands of the Asiatic nations. The Moorish, who were the ancient Moabites and the founders of the holy city of Mecca. The Egyptians, who were the Hammatites and of a direct descendant of Mizraim, the Arabians, the seed of Hagar, Japanese and Chinese. The Hindus of India, the descendants of the ancient Canaanites, the Hittites and the Moabites from the land of Canaan. The Asiatic nations and countries in North, South, and Central America, the Moorish Americans and Mexicans in North America, Brazilians, Argentinians, and Chileans in South America, Colombians, Nicaraguans, and the natives of San Salvador in Central America, etc. All of these are Muslims. The Turks are the true descendants of Hagar, who are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed of Mecca, beginning from Muhammad I, the founder of the uniting of Islam, by the command of the great universal God, Allah. All right? So we recognize Muhammad as a prophet, but we don't say that he's the last one, you know, and we don't stop there. We you know, and we see how we touch with the Hindus of India. They're descendants of the ancient Canaanites, Hittites, and Moabites from the land of Canaan, right? And modernly, you know, we know Canaan as Canada, all right, or Canaan land.
Right.
And old Negro spirituals used to say, you know, going north to Canaan land. That's still north of Amexem.
Right.
Right? Now, if you go back far enough, Pangea, all these continents were connected. And we can look at a regular map and see how they go together like puzzle pieces. Right? Just looking at it from a subterranean level, when you look at a good map that shows you the fault lines, you see that zipper line and those striation marks going away from the different parts of the plate shift, because the plates are going one over the other, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side, they're separating. But if you follow those lines, you'll see how South America, the eastern part of South America fits right into the western part of the Horn of Africa. Okay, how the rest of America and all of Europe, if you smush them down, fit into each other. And the same thing with Asia and Australia meet coming up, right? And some books even talk about how Antarctica, as much as there's a lot of hoopla about it in the news right now, or the wires. Antarctica was at one point in a tropical region. Okay, and there's books that talk about the various pole shifts that have gone on times and times again, and these pole shifts typically happen every 2,600 years or every 26,000 years, give or take whichever folklore you're going off of. But we know for a fact that every 2,600 years, the ages change.
Right.
All right. And if you know from your studies up to now, we're now in the age of Aquarius. Right. We came from the age of Pisces, which is the age of secrecy. The age of Aquarius is supposed to be the age, the age of information and knowledge. So everything that, in terms of our perception of how things were coming from, days past, whatever was prior to this, coming up to now, as we go through this time period, we're going to gain new insight and new understanding over it, in it. So that's why we're seeing this general rise in consciousness overall. But I say that to say we have to keep in mind the beginning of Christianity, right? And it goes right into that in the next chapter here, chapter 40. So that was 45. This is 46. The beginning of Christianity. The foundation of Christianity began in Rome. The Roman nations founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke of law, right? So even in Jesus' time, he came to free his people from under the Roman yoke of law, right? In our days and times, the prophet came to free his people from the Roman yoke of rule and law.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you proclaim and declare your nationality, you kill any argument that says that you're Negro, black, and colored. It's dead. That argument is completely dead. It's null and void. Prior to that point, you are classified as property or civil little mortus, which means to be dead in the eyes of the law. Okay? You have no legal rights. You have no say-so, right? That has nothing to do, and it's like, so before then, after then, in between then, you could be, Mohammedan, Islamic. You could be Jewish. You could be Christian. None of that matters because you're still stateless.
Right.
Right? You're not those religions don't tie you to the land.
Right.
Right? That treaty doesn't recognize you based on your religion. It recognizes you based on your bloodline.
Right.
Right? And the only reason it identifies parties, like when you look at the Treaty of Tripoli, when it talks about Christians and Mohammedan, is because, like I said before, there is and was never a separation between church and state.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about nationality, typically, anciently as it's understood, and when the Moors were ruling, there was a state religion known as Islam. But you could practice Judaism, you could practice Christianity, you could practice, Yoruba if you wanted to, whatever.
Yeah.
But you had to, for the normals of society, deal with the state religion and whatever hadiths or prayers happen in court, and just similar to how now they have the Pledge of Allegiance. They may say a prayer, before or after the national anthem. Okay, they'll make you stand, add allegiance, add attention with your hand over your heart. All right, these, and mind you, this right here, these are Masonic signs and symbols.
Right.
These are ancient customs that are Islamic in nature. Okay? When you get to the 33rd degree, when you ask any Shriner, all right, what they're taught Islam. in the shrine. Okay? We have to get over the concept that of whatever it is that we've been given, of whatever it is we're talking about prior, during and post slavery. We got to go prior to that to really get an understanding of what it is we're looking at and why we're looking at it from that perspective. You follow me? So when we're talking about concepts and trying to get a understanding, an overstanding of where our rights come from, it comes from the law. It comes from the customs of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, right? And ultimately, it comes from you recognizing that, standing up for those principles and enforcing them. That's simply that's as simple as I can make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that security only comes when you recognize the security. When you think that it's something foreign to you, then it remains foreign. Did I answer your question?
No, that's not question for sure.
So what's next? We're about to wrap it up.
No, that's good.
That's good?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right. So just for my closing remarks, if there's no further questions or concerns, I think I'll read this last. I'm gonna read a section. I'm gonna read this section right here, just to kind of further answer your question. I'm gonna read these 2 chapters, and then we're gonna close it out. These last 2 chapters. So chapter 47, Egypt, the capital empire of the dominion of Africa. Right. This is a very, very important chapter. Keep in mind that the sorry?
Is it in Roman numerals in some copies?
Yes. In most copies it is.
What numeral is that?
XLVII.
Okay.
Yep. So I think that's 47. So Egypt, the capital empire of the dominion of Africa. The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing of the land between the father and the son. The dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire. With their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the great Atlantis even into the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. Verse 8, the river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends eastward from the river Nile, westward across the great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. All right, keep in mind, customs, trade, right, culture. Verse 9, according to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the holy land of Canaan. What your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. There is no one who is able to change man from the descent nature of his forefathers unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. These holy and divine laws are from the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America. These laws are to be strictly preserved by the members of all temples of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that they will learn to open their meetings and guide it according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Every subordinate temple of the major temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and create their own laws and customs in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet of the Grand Temple. I, the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, was sent by the great God, Allah, to warn all Asiatics of America to repent from their sinful ways before that great and awful day which is sure to come. The time has come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery, due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father, and straight after the gods of Europe, whom they knew nothing. All right, and this that's the end of chapter 47. And got somebody typing. So then the last part I'm going to read is the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. The last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali. Peace, peace, Islam. Peace, family. The last prophet in these days and times is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam. And his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and return to their own and be one with the Father God Allah. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth that among the descendants of Africa there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We, as a clean and pure nation, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning to the church and Christianity back to the European nations, and as it was prepared by their forefathers and for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. The covenant of the great God Allah, quote, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. Come all ye Asiatics of America and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift all humanity. Come and link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets. Islam. So with that, any last questions or comments? Nope. Alrighty. So I think we had a pretty good class. What Did you learn anything?
Yeah, I learned a lot.
He said you learned a lot.
Yeah, I always do.
Yeah, that's what it's about, man. I appreciate it. So I know we didn't open up with it, but typically we're supposed to open and close, but I'm a little unorthodox in how I do things. But we rise, face the east. You know, if you know, and we say our Moorish American prayer to close and open and close and whatnot. So I'm just gonna do that for the sake of custom. And if you feel so, then join in. If not, so be it. But you know, that's it. 1 second. So we rise facing the east, and Moorish American prayer is basically, and I'll read it to you first. It's Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Jew Ali. Ameen. All right. So we rise, face the east, 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my God, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Jew Ali. Ameen. Ameen. So, peace and love, peace and love, peace and love to all y'all on YouTube. Islam Lunar G Friday class. We back at it one more time. So, a lot of stuff. But he brought you the title and instant class. Confusion continues to confuse, no remembrance of Maghrib al-Aqsa by Moorish descendants. Run through we got a lot of work to do. Battling my arch nemesis, misconfusion. She's been trying to keep me out of course, facing losses, calling all her negative forces. So y'all just get ready, get prepared. You know, if you haven't already been doing so. Because we're going to, you know, a new level next year, as far as like how the movement is actually moving right now. It's picking up its pace. So hopefully you guys have been paying attention and are along for the ride, so to speak, or, you know, in the driver's seat rather. And the reason why I want to put emphasis on being in the driver's seat is because you really are in control of this Moorish movement. You, the individual, whoever's sitting at home or on the phone, you know, looking at this later on YouTube or what have you, you're the one who actually, you know, has the power to make something happen. But what you don't realize most of the time is that fact. And that based on that fact, that it's incumbent upon you to then be proactive with whatever it is you know, care about or want to see get done. You know, that's just kind of how it goes. As far as, you know, like when you think about it, like the prophet said, that we got to take our place amongst the affairs of men, right? We must first know about our birthright, nationality, you know, and our heritage, so that we can take our place amongst the affairs of men. And so often we want to know what to do next without paying attention to the first part, you know, which is to declare and proclaim your nationality. And when, you know, a lot of times we sit back and want to jump the gun or we want to get ahead, what have you, we often miss the mark because we haven't taken care of those basic steps. Or you leave something out, you forget something, you know, what have you. So we shout out to everybody that's in the chat with me, that's in the classroom now. But you often run into an issue of competency. Right, just overall competency, being aware a general awareness is lacking. And that general awareness can only be changed with, a broad set of studies, general studies. And I got a brother, who I was hoping I could get in. I got a couple people I was hoping I could get in on the class this evening to check in with you guys. But they may or may not make it in, what have you. But and thank you if you're just joining us. We're about to enter a phase of things, if you guys haven't realized, where it's a Amexem, right? Or Al-Marak, North America, Northwest Africa, what have you, right? So I have a wonderful piece of literature in my hand. Brother Mizraim, Who Are Moors, Asiatics, Americans, right? Brother Mizraim Els authored this. This is part 2 of Are You in Denial of Your Ancestry? And in the first few pages, the author opens up touching on some very, very pertinent definitions that I really wanted to get on record for you guys. And if you would allow me, if you're watching this later, you just want to skip through this because you know this already, because you guys been studying and have at it in probably about 5-10 minutes. But anyway, and if you're in the comments or whatever, put down below, tell them where to go after I'm done reading this. But anyway, so this is just from page 2 now, on the very, very beginning of the book. Not even done with the table of contents here, and he goes. And pardon me if I'm messing this up. Autochon. It's a noun, Greek. Autochon, sprung from the land itself, autos, self, and chatan, the earth, the ground. One of the aborigines of a country, comma, a man. So Autochon is one of the aborigines of a country. Autochon can be a man, an animal, or plant. So an Autochon can be a man, plant, or animal that's indigenous to the country or the soil, right? So the reference here is Source Common Law, Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, page 120. Definition of autochon, right? Autochonal, or autochonic, aboriginal, primitive, native, indigenous, right? And this is, again, page 120 from Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. The words, and he goes on to say, the words, quote, quote, lineal heirs, like, quote, heirs of the body, mean all lineal descendants to the remotest posterity, and are words of inheritance and not of purchase. Reference source of law, this is coming from Henry Campbell's Law Black Dictionary. Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary of Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence, 4th edition, page 1079. Definition of lineal heir, all right? Then we've got the definition of Moor, right? Now, Moorish, dark, from impartial reference, a member of any of the Asian or African dark races, usually adopting the Mohammedan religion. In history, a Saracen or Arab. And this is coming out of Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, published 1936, right? Emphasis on the words any Asian and African, right? Now this is what I was more or less getting to, and this is kind of going to be the theme going forward for the rest of the class. And this class more or less is going to be reviewed. Now there was probably some difference between a Moor and a Saracen, although in heraldry, like the flags, heraldry, there does not seem to be much distinction. Originally Sharkinian, I believe, pardon me if I messed that up, an Arabian Yemen word signifying, quote, Eastern people, and used in contradistinction to Maghreb, or Western people, or Maghribi, depending on how you pronounce it. Communication skills are going to be pertinent. All right. Our ability to think is going to be very important. Like, not just thinking and being able to get to the answer, but being able to get to the answer in a reasonable amount of time, right? A certain level of proficiency is going to be required of those of us who, you know, claim to want to take our place amongst the affairs of men, right? So in preparation for that, we've been, you know, doing what we can to raise the consciousness of the people, but the people themselves, right, to reiterate my earlier points, the people themselves have to recognize the role that they play in this, okay? Because if you don't, then you're constantly going to be on the sideline and, you know, be in the background wondering, you know, what if, okay? And, you know, in terms of like just opening thoughts and whatnot for this class and like what I wanted to say, because it has been a while since I did the class. People been asking me, you know, whatnot, but I told y'all this is going to happen. But really and truly, don't be so caught up in the newness of anything. You know, don't be so caught up in the veneer or the look of things. Be caught up in the function. You know what I mean? More so than the form. All right? What is the ultimate utility of whatever it is that you're looking at or dealing with? And if you can't figure that out in a reasonable amount of time, then you may want to, you know, just put it off to the side or, you know, put it up on the shelf somewhere for a little minute till, you know, till you find some utility for it. But also keep in mind that if you're dealing with something, especially like more science, and you're trying to apply it, you cannot do it in the same mindset that you had when you first started out. Because the first, you know, the mindset that you had when you first started out didn't know how to apply any of this. You know, you were completely unfamiliar with how things operated. So it's important to understand and overstand who you are first, if for nothing else, but to understand and you know, get a clue about how you learn, right? Like how your brain digests information and is able to, you know, either compartmentalize, synthesize, you know, that information into a, you know, a usable form, you know, or format. And without question or doubt in my mind, studying is the best route. You know, which the old adage of the prophet, study, 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 again, you know, often comes to mind because it rings true, right? In that when you study something that first go around, then the second go around, then that third, there should be things, you know, what should be happening in between each study session is that you're taking notes as you're reading, you know, or listening, you know, what have you. And then after that study session, after you've taken those notes and you've put those things down for a bit, you come back to it, you know, maybe the next day or the next week or whatever with fresh eyes, you know, rested, right? And review what you did. You know, just look at what you've already accomplished. Okay? And same thing with the second round. Okay? And then you get to that third study, and then by that third go around, you hopefully will have a totally different perspective on whatever it is you're dealing with. Okay? And the reason why I'm going over these, you know, common sense basic things, believe it or not, is because most people, like I said, like to seemingly skip over these steps. And then, you know, when you hear the sob stories from people, you know, from different Moors, they will tell you, you know, they wish they would have paid attention. They wish they would have taken it more serious earlier on, you know. And like one more was telling me, it was, you know, he reminded me of the conversation that I had with him when I, you know, was first more expressive about, you know, the science and whatnot in terms of like where I was at and, you know, trying to get people on board, things of that sort. And, you know, I felt I was almost a zealot so to speak. And some people think that's a good word or a bad, you know, whether you think it's good or bad. But I think that's just, you know, whatever. Anyway, you get to a point where you're realizing that, all right, I could tell 100 people who don't, you know, who out of that 100, maybe 5 actually care. You know what I mean? And actually care, you know, want to continue the conversation beyond, you know, a couple of words and, oh, that's nice, you know. And then you've got the rest of the people who, you know, who are just there, you know, like they just kind of give you those looks and blank stares and, oh, you know, and it's the nonverbal communication that tells you a lot about what someone thinks and, you know, what they're not saying and what they're really wanting to say and things of that sort, so on and so forth. But keep in mind, right, you get to a point where you as an individual have to, you know, take it a little bit more serious and realize, all right, I'm just spinning my wheels on some of these things, and other things, you know, I can get more traction on, right? And let's call this, for the sake of conversation, low-hanging fruit, okay? The low-hanging fruit, for the sake of conversation, is, you know, like we said before, studying, declaring and proclaiming your nationality, right? Putting the parties on notice, right? With the various mental locations. Keeping track of whatever, you know, suits I want to, you know, initiate, or whatever issues I'm having, and really drilling down on, you know, the day-to-day things that help all of this, you know, go around, you know, and help your day-to-day sustenance. Because I think for some people, too often we get into a mode of panic because we go from one extreme to the next, you know, from one extreme to the next, and then the pendulum is just swinging, and then you just, you know, just woe out, you know, from going back and forth and back and forth. So it's like, all right, find a steady course of action and stick to it. Don't, you know, and I had to tell a couple Moors a couple weeks ago, whatever, empty your cup. You know, I completely understand, you know, or overstand that just coming into this, you want to, you know, take part and look at all the arrays of quote unquote consciousness that you think, you know, exist out here, you know, and the different methods of whatever it is you're trying to do. But realize that time that you're spending on those other things, those other topics, those other realms of knowledge could be better spent in an actual book, you know, getting the first-hand account for yourself. You know what I mean? Rather than getting it second-hand, third-hand, and then wondering whose hand it came from. You follow? You know, and then when you get some bad information and, you know, stuff doesn't turn out right, you have no one else to blame but yourself. Because, you know, just like any real scholar will tell you, you got to get, you know, first-hand accounts. You got to get you got to get the right sources. You know, what's the source for the information? And so often, a lot of Negroes will ask Moors their sources for information without actually going to look up the sources that we gave you first. And it would be asinine of us to give you further information if you haven't already, you know, looked at what's already available to you. You know, now we could be naive, you know, and assume that you maybe have skipped over some things, or maybe that your eyes are not as strong as they, you know, the next person's, or maybe your comprehension skills just, you know, didn't allow you to focus on certain aspects, or you missed certain things, you know. But it's not good to assume. You follow me? But at the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about, and this is for those who are just checking in, talking about the basics and, you know, birthright, nationality, right? So when we're talking about, you know, doing all those things, you know, that keep everything going, taking care of those basics beforehand, if you do those things, right, if you start on that right now, if you start on developing those good patterns right now, you won't be in a state of panic come tomorrow or next week, right, trying to figure out how to do everything. Everything you need, 9 times out of 10, for those who are just coming in, is on rvbaypublications.com, right? Now, you can listen to some old dirty Moors. You can listen to some, some Negroes who don't know no better about your birthright and nationality. And you could assume their conclusions, and you would be wrong, right? But, those of us who take the time out and, to do our due diligence, to be scholarly, we will find certain things that may, reveal, I don't know, new thoughts, new horizons, new ideas, new concepts. And with those new ideas, new concepts, new thoughts, and new ideas, we can develop new thought patterns and frameworks. And out of those new thought patterns are derived new paradigms, right? Entire lifestyle changes can happen just with the change of thought, right? And, those, I should say, more mundane things that are less divine to our being are easily attainable at that point. Because we have some sense of structure. We have some sense of purpose. Because we know how deep, we really know just how deep our roots go in this soil that we call Northwest.